I've joked that in a Cuban household there were two parties, the Republicans and the Communists, Ted Cruz says now. That is only somewhat tongue-in-cheek. Cruz remembers growing up in a home that was passionately political. There was an urgency about politics, Ted Cruz recalls. You didn't just read the newspaper or watch the news and go, "Oh, that's interesting." Cruz's Aunt Sonia had fought in the counter-revolution against the Castro regime and was thrown in prison and tortured for doing so, and that pain burned bright within the family. What I heard growing up, Cruz says, is that having principled men and women in office is how we protect ourselves from tyranny. And so as a little boy, if you'd asked me, "What do you want to do in life?" I would have said, "I want to defend freedom." When Reagan won that 1980 presidential election, launching a conservative wave that would become the most powerful force in American politics, Cruz knew he wanted to be part of it. I think there is an entire generation of conservatives for whom Ronald Wilson Reagan will always be our president, in much the same way the World War II generation referred to FDR as our president, he says. He was ardent in his beliefs and the way he expressed them. Indeed, some considered him obnoxious in his certitude and self-confidence. He entered Princeton University, and one of his roommates there would later recall Cruz saying his life's goal was to become like Ronald Reagan, a principled conservative and great communicator. He became a star debater at Princeton and then a top law student at Harvard. His outsider status as an outspoken conservative in largely liberal institutions didn't bother him. He reveled in it. After law school at Harvard, he entered private practice, but he also worked on the presidential campaign of George W. Bush in 2000. He then became Texas's Solicitor General, effectively the state's top lawyer. His entry into elective politics was typically audacious. In his first run for public office in 2012, he defeated a far more entrenched Texas Republican to win a seat in the United States Senate. After that victory, he was approached by Stephen Penley, an artist who does patriotic art, who offered to create a painting of Reagan for Cruz's Senate office. Cruz accepted and commissioned a painting of the iconic moment when Ronald Reagan stood at the Berlin Wall and beseeched the leader of the Soviet Union to tear down this wall. The resulting piece, a 10-foot-long monster, hangs in a place of honor in Cruz's Senate office. So, heading into the 2016 presidential campaign, if there was anybody who thought himself entitled to claim the Reagan mantle, it was Ted Cruz. In his announcement speech, he specifically harked back to Reagan's successful 1980 presidential campaign. He invoked Reagan regularly. Others, in a crowded Republican field, who thought they themselves had pretty good records as lovers of Ronald Reagan, chafed at Cruz's claiming of the Reagan legacy for himself. Yet Cruz seemed to fit into Reagan's footsteps pretty well. Many in the old Reagan coalition and the conservative old guard did in fact line up behind him. David Keene, who worked for Reagan as long ago as 1976 and later ran the American Conservative Union, backed Cruz, as did longtime conservative fundraising wizard Richard Viguerie, who thought Cruz would march to the nomination. But it was not to be. As Ted Cruz and the rest of the world learned in 2016, the Republican Party had changed. It had become more blue-collar, more rooted in rural and small-town America, more disillusioned with the existing party establishment, more skeptical of free market economics and global trade, more anti-immigration, and simply more angry. Its voters were ready to consider something different, radically different, in fact. They were ready for Donald J. Trump. Trump was a populist and a nationalist, but certainly not a traditional conservative. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, who would become a Trump fan, says simply, "He's not a conservative. He didn't sit around reading National Review, the traditional Bible for conservative thinkers." Instead, Gingrich defines Trump as an anti-liberal, a common-sense, practical person who understands how